Anybody new to Bhagavad Gita? Anybody not familiar with Bhagavad Gita? Do we need an introduction to what that is? Okay. Good. So we're going to be discussing chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita. And
Chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge.
this was prepared for children. So there I see there's a few children here. But this is for you. And then there's some big children. And that's for us too. This is from Gita Camp for the kids in the Midwest, North Midwest. And what I'm going to do, in the car, by the side, there's that piece of paper to print out. I'm going to start with a little summary of, okay, chapter 9. Chapter 9 comes after chapter 8. And chapter 8 is attaining the Supreme. So at the concluding section of chapter 8 describes how yogis attain the Supreme during the 6 months and when the sun is moving in the northerly direction, etc., etc., etc. There's the yogic procedure, and then there's the Ananya Bhakta procedure. Ananya means undivided or unmixed devotion. And those persons, Krishna says in chapter 8, they can leave at any time. They don't have to have all those rules and restrictions because they get Krishna's help, how to come to him. So that's how, with reference to that message from chapter 8, chapter 9 begins explaining how does one come to that platform. Because chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita, it comes, well, the end of chapter 9 literally marks midway because there's 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, of which 9 is part, it's that the emphasis is upon bhakti. Because Krishna has made a promise to Arjuna. I'm going to explain how to attain the topmost yoga. The uttama form of yoga. Sameyukta tamo mataha. So he's doing that here in this chapter. How to come to this Ananya Bhakta platform. He's fulfilling his promise. And in the very beginning, so there's 3 sections. The first one is the Raja Vidya, Rajaguyam section. There's a little book for book distributors called Raja Vidya. I don't know if it's available in print in India. I don't know if it's available in our...
It is mine.
It is.
It is available here.
Raja Vidya, okay. Chapter 9, Raja Vidya, King of Knowledge. So Krishna does this little is announcing that I've said a lot of good things and this is the best of all the things that I've said so far. So listen carefully, Arjuna.
Bhagavatam side sponsor. Thank you for the
If anybody has one of those little devices, you might want to check it. Make sure it's in vibrator off mode. So he eulogizes what the message is going to be, and then he says there are those that can understand it, and there are those that cannot understand it. And one of the essential elements for understanding is being faithful. Now, faithful doesn't mean blind faith, but faithful means when you hear and you've understood, you live your life accordingly. And it's confidential, so it's not easy to understand, but one can understand if one hears faithfully. And then if one doesn't hear faithfully, then the material energy's got you. You won't be able to understand. Then he goes on in this section describing what our acharyas call Aishvarya Gyan. What does Aishvarya mean? Opulence. So it's an opulence of a mystic opulence. Yogam Aishvaryam, Krishna says in this little section. It says mystic opulence, this mystic potency, where he has a relationship with the material world that's mystical to understand, not easily understood. So, by Krishna's material energy, so on the one hand, by Krishna's material energy, he creates, he pervades, and he annihilates the whole cosmic manifestation. And while it's moving under his direction, he's the supreme director. While he's the supreme director, he's not involved with its movements, and thus he remains detached and aloof. And gives a very interesting example which we're going to hear more of. I'm giving a little verbal summary and then we're going to do it again through this visual and audio-visual presentation. He gives a wonderful example. It's a analogy. There's the mighty sky and there's the wind blowing in the mighty sky. So as the wind is blowing, what happens to the sky? Is the sky moving or not moving? Because the sky is more subtle, the wind can and the sky doesn't move because the sky contains that wind that's moving. Similarly, Krishna, because he's the source of everything and the most subtle of all things, the whole cosmic manifestation is within him, and it's undergoing change and transformation, but not him. He's unchanging. Although he's the source of it, and it's moving under his direction, he's unchanged. He has this very mystical relationship, that's this Aishvarya feature. And the worldly people, the mentioned earlier, the foolish people, they can't understand it. It's inexplicable. But for the devotee, they go, Krishna is very wonderful. It enhances their love for Krishna to understand the nature of the relationship between Krishna and everything. This is a Sambandha Gyan topic. Sambandha, the relationship between Krishna and Krishnas. So in one sense, we're going to hear in chapter 9, what is Krishna's, in one sense, is Krishna. This is this oneness and difference aspect. So there's a oneness aspect, and there's a difference aspect. And one can emphasize the oneness, which comes later in chapter 9. And here is the oneness and difference aspect. It's non-different than him and different from him. In the sense that he's the source, it's non-different. In the sense that he's the source, he's unchanged while it changes. And that concludes this first section, King of Knowledge. having understood that or explained that, Krishna goes on in the next section to say, again, there's foolish people and those that are wise. And the foolish people deride Krishna when he appears in a form that which to look to them looks like it's material, but it's not. And those who are wise understand that Krishna's form is not material, and they worship him with love. And those second category persons, they can understand him. And then he does this very interesting thing. It is a large section of chapter 9. He describes persons that have a conception that's a limited and incomplete conception of Krishna, and Krishna accepts them as his devotees too, even though their worship is with a limited conception and even mistaken conception. But they have some conception of the Supreme, and he divides it into three. Ready? Here's the three. Ekatvena, that's the monist. Eka means one. Prataktvena bahuda, that's bahuda. Those are worshippers of the many, the demigods. And then there's the topmost of them, and that's the worshippers of the universal form, Vishvaksena. Those who worship the universal form. So that the worship of the universal form is a detail, but you'll find that that's the subject matter of chapter 1 of Canto 2. Chapter 1 of Canto 2 is the beginning of the response. It's Shukadeva Goswami's first speaking comes in Canto 2. And he's responding to Maharaj Parikshit's question, which was, what should one think of at the time of death? What is that subject matter, what is that subject matter one should absorb oneself in at the time of death? And what's my duty at the time of death? So he starts with explaining, you have to have a conception of the Supreme. And that's where Shukadeva Goswami begins, universal form, chapter 1. He goes further to the Paramount feature and goes further to the personal feature. But that's where he starts. So, back to chapter 9, there's the Ekadvena folks, those that worship one, the Supreme as one, Brahman. There are those that worship the many, the demigod worshippers, and those that worship the universal form. Of the three, the worship of the universal form is the higher, or the highest of the three. And so there are many verses covering. We're going to get some of that detail shortly. And then he describes the process of connecting with him as a person, the Supreme Person, devotional service. And he describes the process of patram pushpam palam toyam, that's in this section. Offer with love and devotion, he accepts. He describes the position of the devotee, again this ananya, bhajate mam ananya bhak. Same word is used in chapter 8, is used again in chapter 9. So this ananya bhakti, bhakta, Krishna gives special consideration to them because of their undivided devotion. So undivided devotion means two things. Mind, madgatena antaratmana, their mind is always absorbed in Krishna. Bhajate mam ananya bhak, there it is in the end of chapter 6. This ananya word is very important. At the end of chapter 6, that what the mind does and what the body does is Krishna, 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 Krishna. Such a person may, by unusual circumstance, overwhelming force of material energy, do sudurachar. It's not likely to happen. But if it does happen, Krishna considers him saintly and Krishna corrects them. He personally intervenes in the life of such a person. He has special affection for the devotee who has special affection for him. And then he concludes, so this is the end of our chapter 9 summary, with Manmana Bhavanmad Bhakto. That's the final verse of chapter 9. So he's fulfilling his promise going back to the beginning of chapter 7. I'm going to explain how to come to this Ananya Bhak position. Okay, so now we're ready to go. Those are the 3 sections of this chapter 9. Whoop. I have to click on a picture.
Chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge.
That's Veer Krishnamaharaj's voice, by the way.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
No, I can make it stronger. Whoops.
Chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed.
So that's the little Mahima section. He's helping Arjuna, which means he's helping us, to pay special attention, because we all want to be joyful, and this is a joyful process. We all want to live eternally. We don't want to die, and it's everlastingly performed. So if we hear carefully what Krishna is saying, it'll help us to be very attentive to his message. But
those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world.
so now, here's a natural, logical, good question.
Krishna's unmanifested form pervades everything, but Krishna himself remains detached from matter. Material nature, working under his direction, produces all moving and non-moving beings.
We're supposed to do something else. We're supposed to do this one. Yes, this one. If devotional service has all these nice things about it, and it's so easy and joyful and nice, why isn't everybody doing it? And Krishna gives the answer, because they don't have faith, and there's different categories and degrees of faithlessness. Some people, they just don't have knowledge. They don't know what the scriptures say. And then there's some other people, they know what the scriptures say, but they don't believe in what the scriptures say. And there's others that just kind of have an idea, but they're not so sure. They're the doubting type and the hesitating type. You know that saying, he who hesitates, you know the rest? He who hesitates is lost. Right? So, categories. Scholars, all kinds of people that know something of Bhagavad Gita, they don't really understand Bhagavad Gita. They come up with some other idea. They just can't accept Krishna's supremacy and the supremacy of bhakti. They think that it's Krishna's a mythology and the process of bhakti is hype or simply eulogy. They think it's for sentimentalists, not scientific, for weak-minded, uneducated people, or they're just so absorbed in sense gratification they don't think about it at all. So there's different categories of faithlessness. And one of Prabhupada's favorite examples is the Dr. Frog example. You know the Dr. Frog example? Oh, it's nice. Once upon a time, there was a frog who had a PhD. Dr. Frog. And somebody came and visited him in the bottom of the well and said, "My dear Dr. Frog, there's water in this well, but did you know there's this place called the ocean, and it's a vast body of water." Oh? Vast body of water? Twice as big as this well? Oh no, much bigger. So one of the versions of telling the story is the skin under his jaw gets bigger. Is it this big? Is it this big? And eventually it bursts because it's far beyond even his imagination, because he only knows what he's experienced. And what he's experienced is the bottom of a well, very small. So because of that faithlessness due to ignorance, really can't understand. So what is faith? That's faithlessness. What's faith? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives this definition. Unflinching trust. Shraddha shabde, Vishwas kahe, Sudrita nishchaya, Bengali. Faith is unflinching trust in something sublime. What's that? That simply by serving Krishna, sarva karma krita hoya, everything you want comes from that one thing. What's an example? Somebody has, they're a materialist. Get money. Money, 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 money. Because you get money, you can get whatever you want. It's not true, but, and then when they get really disappointed but they, focused on money without going, I'm going to try to go quickly. I could tell some stories, but I won't. I'll tell one. Some years ago, they had airline seats where you could make a phone call from the back of the seat. So we got on a plane. So sitting next to me was a Jewish man and his wife, and I'm on an aisle seat. And it was Chicago, so it was a delay because of weather, and they had the planes getting out onto the, whatever you call it, out there. Because they said if we stay back at the gate, they won't let us, we'll be last in line, so we have to go back. So we're sitting out there, they said, you can make some calls. So this man is looking at the screen saying, da 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 da. Gets on his phone, says, buy 10 of those and sells 50 of those and da 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 da. Because he's got money, money, money. And as soon as we landed, how did it go? Did we make some money? I mean, I was thinking, This man has faith he can get money because that's money's the honey. Or people that are Olympic athletes. They really have an austere, regulated, regimented, they don't do lots of stuff because they got one thing, get the gold medal. Very disciplined lives. You know, when it's over, it's party time, but very disciplined lives. So, what's that faith for the devotee? This one thing, bhakti, Krishna bhakti, sarva karma kritahoya, everything that you want from that one. That's this vyavasayatmika buddhi. The intelligence is singular. Everything that I do as a devotee is aligned to achieve Krishna bhakti. Because if I can achieve Krishna bhakti, my life is full. It doesn't mean I don't do other things, but whatever I do, it's Krishna bhakti, Krishna bhakti, Krishna bhakti. It's for that, and if it's not, then no thank you. It's, you know, there's this saying, when you give a strong yes to something, it's really easy to say with a smile no to other things. It's not painful no, it's with a big smile. No thank you. Because you're connecting. There's happiness within that you, and no thank you to the other things. It's not, the mind doesn't get disturbed. So, our teaching, Bhagavatam teaching is, find the root of existence, just like find the root of the tree and put water on the root of the tree, and a whole tree, all the parts of the tree, get the water. Similarly, follow the root of find the root of all existence and place your energy, service, ability, talents, everything, wealth, you name it, place it there. And everything flourishes. That's what faith is. And for spiritual knowledge, it's the most important factor. That's just the beginning of chapter 9. That's what it's teaching us. And it's practical. Distraction comes when our faith is weak. Who here in this room could say, my japa is never distracted? So when one's faith becomes very strong, then attention goes, because faith is very strong. And if you don't have faith in Krishna, there's a whole chapter. You're going to have faith in something else. Whatever that something else is. Get money, become powerful, become a big athlete, or something or other. And how do we cultivate that faith? Through association. This is Narada giving his association to King Pachinibari. And when we get that association, what do? We hear. We hear from them. Very nice painting of Prabhupada speaking. And he is delivering Krishna's message of Bhagavad Gita. Shukadeva Goswami is delivering the message of the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. So hearing is one method of associating and rendering of service with humility, as King Prataparudra did to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he got the mercy. Now, question. It's not a difficult one to answer either. Can you name the name of, in our Vaishnava line, a great personality who did exactly this? He heard and rendered service in the association of saintly people, and he became very elevated. And his name is? Narada Muni. Very good. So, very quickly, for the kids in the audience in particular, I'm picking on you. It's okay? Yeah. Okay. The history of Narada Muni. He tells this story to his disciple, Vyasadeva. And it was a previous day of Brahma. That was who he was before he was Narada. He was this obscure little nobody, the son of a maidservant, and he was assisting his mother, who's service it was to look after people who stayed at the inn or the dharamshala in some place. So during the rainy season, these sages came, and so they stayed there for 4 months. And here's little Narada in his previous life, doesn't give his name, but he brought their meals and he did little services. Whatever he could do, wash their clothing, this and that, and so he was serving them, and he got to hear their conversations as they were speaking. And because his nature was very gentle, they appreciated little boy, very calm, peaceful, gentle. So they gave their mercy to him, and eventually they gave mantra to him, and they gave teachings to him, and he got trained up. He got a chance to take the remnants of their prasadam, and he felt something. He felt his sins were being eradicated. He felt he was being lifted to the transcendental platform. A little boy, in just this 4-month period of time. And so he was taking the teachings and the association of these great personalities seriously, and as he was growing, his awareness of his spiritual identity began to become stronger. And the misidentification with the gross and subtle coverings became diminished. And he could eventually understand the unique position of Krishna at the center of everything, just by this association, hearing and serving in a humble mood. So the sages gave him these instructions that he could do for the rest of his life. The rainy season was over, they left. One unfortunate day, his mother, going to a well to get some water, got bit by a cobra, and she died at once. So here's this little boy, no father, no mother, no nothing, materially speaking, but he somehow had the sense just to accept this as this great misfortune as some arrangement of providence, and he left to go traveling here and there and be, not become a worldly person, but experience the creation of God. And every day, at the end of the day, he would sit, morning and evening, he would sit and do this practice that he was given by the sages. And one day, underneath a banyan tree, he was engaged in his meditation, and much to his surprise, the personality of Godhead appeared within his mind and in his heart. And he experienced ecstatic eruption in his body and his mind, and his whole body was trembling, tears streaming down his eyes. And then, poof, the Supreme Lord disappeared. He was startled. And he looked around, and where'd he go? And he heard this voice. Supreme Lord spoke to him, little boy, saying, normally I do not appear unless one has become fully purified, but to encourage you, I appeared before you. You won't see me again for the rest of your life, but please continue in this way, and you will come to me. Sure enough, that's what happened. And this narration to Vyas, Narada says, just like, not lightning and thunder, but lightning and illumination occurs simultaneously, when the soul left the body, his spiritual form was manifest, his Swarup. And from that Swarup, it was also an arrangement of the Supreme Lord that he, in this form of Narada, he entered into the body of Vishnu, Mahavishnu, who was lying in the causal ocean, and then during the next day of Brahma, Garbhodakshai Vishnu manifested Brahma. So he became the son of Brahma. So he was in this, there's the number, 4,300,000,000 solar years, Brahma woke up. Time to begin my sadhana, and my service. And one of his sons became Narada. And since that time, by the mercy of Lord Vishnu, Narada's been engaged in service to Vishnu. That is, an empowered representative, a Shakti-Avesh avatar, Narada, carrying the Lord's Bhakti Shakti and giving bhakti to others. So how did it happen? Again, this is Krishna's fulfilling his promise, but being explained through the agency of Narada by hearing, by sadhusanga, which means hearing and rendering service. Same as the message of Bhagavad Gita, 434. Okay, so now we're back to chapter 9. About faith and faithlessness. Oh. Supposed to use sound. Okay. So Krishna is now going to describe his mystic opulence.
By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me.
It's double talk.
Behold my mystic opulence.
Everything rests in me, but everything doesn't rest in me. I call it Upanishadic double talk. Then comes his, behold my mystic opulence. So that everything rests upon Krishna.
Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this
I'm going back. I'm trying to go back. Yeah, I wanted to go here. And Fifth Avenue, there's at Rockefeller Center, there's this sculpture, Charles Atlas lifting the earth. So it's not like that. Everything's resting on Krishna's broad shoulders. Getting very tired the longer he stands there holding the planet Earth. Rather, Krishna's position is it's moving by the agency of his material energy, but he is aloof. So there's Krishna aloof, and there's the three modes of material nature who act according to his indication. And he is situated everywhere in his Paramatma feature. And that way he is personally present as Paramatma. He is energetically present through his material energy. But he personally
Although I am the
remains
maintainer
aloof.
of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation.
Then comes the metaphor.
Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti. Producing all moving and non-moving beings.
Foolish persons do not know Krishna's transcendental and supreme nature. They consider the human-like form of the Lord to be material. The great souls, however, are undiluted.
So Krishna revisits the same message he mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, those who are foolish and those that are wise. And the foolish, when they see Krishna has form, they think, wrongly, it's a material form. And that is a byproduct of delusion of the material energy. But the great souls, they're not deluded like that. They understand Krishna's form as spiritual and transcendental. That you can understand that not with the material mind. With the material mind, it bounces, doesn't go in. So it becomes mythology or sentimentalism or some other bad name. Just a little sharing. Somebody gave me a gift, and I really like it. And it's a little recording, not a recording device, it's a playing device that has all of Prabhupada's recorded material on it. So lately I've been listening to, the section is interviews. So the latest interview section is in New York. There's a Newsday magazine interviewer, and then the next was an Associated Press interviewer. And they both had encounters with book distributors and were a little unhappy with their experience, because in those days it wasn't done nicely. They used the word accosted. My brother told me the same thing. This was not just, he knew I was distributing books, and he said, your organization has a perception that goes like this, da-da-da-da-da-da. People don't know what's in the books. They just see your behavior, da-da-da-da-da-da. So, that was during that period of time. And the persons that he was dealing with were foolish. They were intelligent in a material sense, but they just couldn't get it. And he tried very patiently for 30, 35 minutes to very patiently help them understand that the reason that you can't understand this organization is you're looking at it through the material lens, and it's not a material organization. It's not that the goal is not material. If I maybe some other time go through the example was, there were two examples so simple. He said that the person in prison is breaking rocks. And they have another person that comes into the prison and says, this is not your real business, breaking rocks in a prison. And the people in the prison say, how come you're not helping us break rocks? Well, because it's not a real business. I want you to give you some good news. Freedom is your business, not breaking rocks in the prison. So Prabhupada is explaining that to this reporter. People say you're dismissing the valuable contribution they can make to the world. Instead you have them, banging on tambourines and singing. And they're brainwashed and all those other terminologies. And Prabhupada took exception and said that this is misunderstanding let me explain, and explain again, and again. Then finally he turned to the devotees and said, this man is also foolish. Because he wasn't saying, don't be responsible in material life, but he's saying that the message of Krishna consciousness is, don't be in material life. Be in spiritual life. Do your duties in this world in spiritual consciousness. But the man couldn't understand because he was looking through the lens of the body. So Prabhupada kept using the metaphor over and over. It's prison. The body's a prison. Just see, you're speaking disparagingly about this wonderful body, the wonderful things bodies can do to help other bodies. You're like real negative about, the valuable things of life and serving others. And Prabhupada didn't say, that's not our message. He just kept giving the example that, breaking rocks in the prison. Our message is, so, Prabhupada never taught, it's not in Bhagavad Gita's message, Arjuna engage in fight. Mama nusmara, yujacha. Don't forget the mama nusmara part, please. Then another reporter was, around the same, it wasn't the same day, but around the same time, July 75. A car and a driver of the car. You put gas in the car. You don't put gas in the driver. And you feed the driver, you don't give food to the car. So there's a need for the car and there's a need for the driver. Our emphasis is, don't forget the driver, because without the driver, the car is useless. It won't go anywhere or do anything. We're not saying neglect the car. Take care of the car. But don't neglect the driver. And this Western modern civilization is neglecting the driver. He didn't even say the soul, or who you really are. He just said the driver. Kept using this metaphor over and over. Man didn't get it. He didn't get it. It went on for 18 times. He wanted to go on to the next thing. He said, no, don't go on to the next thing. Do you understand this analogy? It was clear it was an analogy, but they're distinct things. The car, the driver of the car, the body, the owner of the body, deha and dehi. So don't forget the dehi. And people have forgotten dehi. This is all about deha. And happiness is out there. And the life engagement, the success and advancement is out there. Instead of an animal running on 4 legs, it's a car running on 4 wheels, and that's advancement. It's the same business. Go from point A to point B on 4 wheels or 4 legs. You're an animal. If that's all you do. What about the driver of the car? Our contribution, he was trying to explain to these reporters, our contribution, because they were asking why so many young people here in America are taking interest in Eastern philosophy, in Eastern religion. He said, it's not religion, it's science. There's a difference between the driver and the car. Doesn't matter whether you're Christian or Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist or Jewish, the driver and the car are different. We're giving this knowledge. We don't say don't do your worldly duties. We say know who you are. You're already doing your duties. That's where your intelligence is going. But what about, where's that institution that says who you are? Really. Not self-actualization as it's taught in psychology classes today. I studied some of those and got really disappointed. Okay, so there's the foolish and the great souls, the Mudhas and the Mahatmas.
Fools deride me when I descend in the human form, do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion.
Important verse. Then there are those that don't worship Krishna directly. So he's going through this range, chapter 9. Those that have Ekatvena, Prataktvena Bahuda, Vishvata Mukham. There's other worshippers. And, not understanding Krishna correctly, they worship in a wrong way. Then he goes through this section of how his vibhutis, opulences in this world, are partial manifestations of him. We'll hear it again in chapter 10.
Others, who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge, worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. But it is I who am the ritual. I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama and the Yajur Vedas. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seed. O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me.
Different worshippers reach different goals. Men who want to attain the heavenly planets worship the demigods, and then take birth among them to enjoy godly delights. But such men, after exhausting their pious credits, return to earth. Men who worship ancestors go to the planets of the ancestors, and those who worship ghosts become ghosts. But one who worships Krishna with exclusive devotion goes to him forever.
It's a very clear statement, and it's true. But there are the Ekat Vena folks say, it's all one. Whatever you do, it's the same, you go to the same place. Although it's very clearly not logical. Go to a train station, get on any train, and you go to the same place. And it's not consistent with what Bhagavad Gita teaches either.
Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack. And I preserve what they have. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti. But they do so in a wrong way.
That's a very liberal definition of Madhyaji. And it has everything to do with one's conception. And if the conception is not this descending from the highest spiritual authority, God, into my heart, cleaning the other conceptions that previously were cluttering there, then one is going to worship the other way, because worship is what souls do. You worship men, you worship rock stars or political figures or movie celebrities. Just a little sharing. I was recently in China, and one of the programs that we had was at this fabulously opulent estate, part of which was a little Zen temple, and that was where the program was, at the Zen temple, at the place of this fabulously wealthy movie star in China. And the movie star in China, just before I got there, they have a spring festival as a national holiday. Very rare, they have days off of work in China. But they had spring festival, and during the spring festival was the premiere of a movie by this really famous guy. And it was about exploring the universe. You know, it was a kind of a modern Star Wars type thing. But he was taking the theme of we're tiny, and the universe is very expansive, and we should be interested to understand what's our place in this big universe out there. It completely fit in with what the message was. And there was a lot of people that attended because they thought we had been invited by this guy because our topic was the same as this. So I asked the people in the audience, they showed the billboard advertisement for the thing, how many of you saw the movie? 90% of the people saw the movie already. And they thought we were invited by this guy to speak about the theme of this movie. So I said, you probably, those of you that didn't, you'll see it. Maybe those that you saw will see it again. Because here's the Vedic picture of where we fit into the big universe. It was really deep. Anyway. But it's, the conception is not, it's the limited picture of what is the source of everything, or the highest truth, or whatever, the supreme, leads to an indirect, or as he's saying here, avidhi, without knowledge of the wrong way. But it's good to have some notion of the supreme. That's good. But get the right one, please. It'll help you get there.
I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me.
Nice image, right? Someone sitting there chanting japa. By the way, that's the editor of BTG sitting there chanting japa in front of the deities. And where do you go? Those who worship me will live with me. We're almost done with the chapter.
Whatever Krishna's devotee does, eats, offers, or gives away in charity, he does as an offering unto the Lord. Krishna reciprocates by carrying what his devotee lacks and preserving what he has. By taking shelter of Krishna, even low-born persons can attain the supreme destination.
So now we just moved into this final section, which is having attained this position of devotion, how does Krishna feel towards such a person? Very confidential. How does Krishna feel? That's what's being revealed by Krishna.
If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. Whatever you do, whatever you eat,
Remember, this is a children's Gita camp.
whatever you offer, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me, in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Even if one commits the most abominable action,
More tricks of putting the snake in the sage.
if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Sudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary, miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. Engage your mind, always thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me. And worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me.
This used to work. This is the Vimana that takes Arjuna to Krishna in the spiritual world. But somehow it stopped working. So that's the last verse. That's the end of chapter 9. It's only 8:15. Most confidential knowledge, understanding the proper way to connect with the topmost of all of the yoga systems, Madgatena Antaratmana, and Shadhavan Bhajate Yomam. Those two. Mind absorbed in and body engaged in with priti purvakam, with loving affection. And the neutrality of Krishna, that he's equal to all, is his position. And at the same time, when someone approaches him with affection, he reciprocates with whatever someone approaches him with. He considers to be his friend. One who considers Krishna their dearmost friend, Krishna considers his friend. He reciprocates exactly as we extend ourselves to him, exactly as he says in Bhagavad Gita. And that looks like partiality. Hiranyakashipu saw it as partiality. He condemned Vishnu. You say you're impartial, but you killed my brother and protected the demigods. You're not impartial, you're my enemy. As you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. Ha ha ha. Divine and demoniac nature. Okay, so, any discussion? Chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
Maharaj, you're talking about faith,
Yeah.
ekatvena, pritatvena, bahuda. So my question is on that pritatvena, bahuda, demigod worship. So we find that we can categorize the world into two categories. One is people without faith, and one who have some kind of faith.
Yes, some kind of faith.
So
Everyone has faith, but no faith in the Supreme. And then there's faith in the Supreme, whether it's right or wrong conception. Okay? Now,
So now, so those who have some kind of faith, particularly I'm talking about demigods,
Yeah.
we often see that when we bring Krishna consciousness, and we try to bring in their lives, we often see that there is a worship of both, whether they're worshiping as a demigod or a false guru, or we see that once you get into their house, it's very difficult for them to reject the other piece and just have Krishna. So they take it both hand in hand. So you'll see that they have Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and next to that they have some demigod picture or this so-called guru, and sometimes it's very difficult for those people to come out of.
I got it. I got the message. Now what's the punchline?
So how do we speed up? How do we help them to? Because we are just giving them a choice, and we are trying to.
Arjuna gives Krishna. Krishna gives Arjuna a choice. So we can be better than Krishna. So what you do, you know, the speed up is the adverb that you're adding. You know, how do we qualitatively have them move forward? You know, be Krishna conscious. And by that I mean, you know, purity is the force that helps people move forward. And when people see that here is a person who is pure, you know, that's inspiring. So the best thing you can do, or we can do, is become pure. Because that's going to help people feel inspired to go whatever it is that pure person says to go to. So there may be some preliminary things that somebody needs to do, like, you know, maybe be vegetarian, or maybe, you know, rise early in the morning, or, you know, something. So the discriminating devotee needs to be pure and get a sense of the person who they're interacting with, and help that person who wants to go another step identify a doable step that they can do. But it may not be necessarily letting go of what they've done lifelong in terms of their worship. It may be, but you know, it's not a. It has to be customized. It can't be a cookie cutter of what can we do. Invest in the relationship for people that you have a sense they're open to the idea of making another step. And then otherwise, you know, how they have their altar and stuff like that, that those other changes will happen as their heart changes, not just changing what's on their altar, the rituals that they're observing. Change the rituals without changing their heart, it won't have a change. Change their heart and the rituals will change. So it depends on the person, but how you interact to help them take the next step. But for sure, universally, is the relationships that you have with those persons. And they need to feel you care about them. There's some of them, you're not just trying to fix them because they're broken or something, or change them because you got a better ism than theirs, but you care about them. You want to help them as a friend. So that affective connection is very important. And then you will have a much better idea of what's a doable step for them, and you indicate the doable step, and they'll be ready to do the doable step in the right direction. Now, having said all of that, sometimes it's appropriate just to like, but that takes some intuitive discrimination and some spiritual purity, because otherwise it's, it'll just blow up.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
So how do we balance, like, let's say there are two families or two individuals, and we're not able to give our entire time to one person, so we have to divide our time, or we have to help them out, both of them, but some of them are like very slow, some of them are picking up, and we want to spend time. Do we spend time on the person who wants to progress?
Yes, but wanting to progress doesn't necessarily, my experience is, it's not how fast. If you're, I gotta see fast, or, I'm not interested. That's, some people are like that. And my preference is that somebody has genuine faith, and they recognize I'm here, and I know that I need to move, there, but I'm not in the fast lane. But I know, so they're faithful and they want to move. So for me, such a person is, it's good to maintain close communication with those persons.
Thank you.
But, it's certainly nice to see people that want to move in the fast lane. But then some people that want to move in the fast lane don't really have a good foundation, and before you know it, they're a shooting star and they're gone. That happens too. Not always, but that happens. So, fast lane, slow lane isn't necessarily the criterion. Okay. Yes.
Right. Maharaj, we talked about faithless person. How do we
I spoke about what?
faithless people?
Faithless. Okay.
How do we deal with those kinds of people? What are the
How do you deal with them? It depends on what kind of faithlessness they have. Yeah, if someone has a viral disease, you want to keep some distance. If someone has a mild flu, it's not so problematic. So it depends. If they're offensive, you keep a healthy distance. If they're bewildered or, yeah, so it depends.
Thank you.
Always, for sure, always maintain the mood of service. And even if that service is, I don't know what I can do for this faithless person, but I certainly wish them well. As the well-wisher, that well-wishing benefit goes to that person. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, in the slides, in the 9th chapter, Krishna talks about do everything as an offering to me.
Mm.
So in our day-to-day life, we do so many activities,
Yes.
we do so many things. So is Krishna talking about offering activities or the results of the activities?
Both. I mean, bhakti is you offer the activity, and with it goes the result. And karma yoga is you offer the result. But in bhakti is we offer the activity and automatically the result is included. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, in my chapter where Krishna talks about when a devotee performs abominable actions, I will protect him and take care of him. Are those abominable actions performed by accident? Or
By accident.
By accident, so not
By
intentional.
accident. Explicitly. Prabhupada gives the example of the sea. The sea comes in, and it comes up to a certain mark, and that's where the tide level is, and then it recedes. And it comes in, and it recedes. And here comes a tsunami. And then it recedes. And then it's back to... So, accidental, not intentional, but just circumstance sometimes for the Ananya Bhakta, the circumstance of a tsunami just becomes overwhelming. Like the example, specifically, like the example of Maharaj Pariksit, becoming overwhelmed with thirst, becoming overwhelmed with anger, and taking some insulting action. It's not Maharaj Pariksit. But it was, Sudurachar. Not deliberate, circumstantial. And so that's a test. If it's an everyday, a regular reoccurrence, then it's not circumstantial. It's a feature of that character. But the Ananya Bhakta becomes freed from those, tendencies by the power of bhakti, but still something may be overwhelming and some bad. Okay. Yes.
Maharaj, devotees sometimes we have a tendency that while we perform our services, there's this thought in the back of the mind, Krishna will be pleased. We're doing these services to please Krishna. Sometimes there is a thought that we're doing these services to please the devotees. But at the same time, we also learn that our devotional service should be unmotivated, right?
Well, we're not there yet. No, pleasing Krishna is a motivation, and pleasing the devotee is a motivation, and those are spiritual motivations, those are good motivations, we don't want to get rid of those. But the unmotivated, ahaituki, this hetu is a material cause. I do this because then I can get that. But we're not pure yet. So we should strive for pure. In between, we're not there yet.
So then the question is, how do we get there?
Well, by practice, and by good association, and chanting the holy name carefully. Yes, over the corner. Thank you for taking the microphone around. Kind of you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is a little bit related to that was just asked. So in the slides we saw that Narad Muni, when he was praying, he saw Narayan and he said that this is just to give you encouragement. So in your experience or in the devotee's experience, I'm not saying we are going to have an experience like that, but have you known that people have had these experiences?
Yes.
And then they have, okay.
Yes.
And then how do we know we are on track?
From Bhagavad Gita. There's standard, there's guidelines found in Bhagavad Gita. So someone may have an experience, and then, I've seen this also, and then, get phased out. So that to have an experience doesn't mean, they're receiving some special mercy. What they do with that special mercy is another thing. They may think, oh, I'm special, and then, check out. So it's steadiness, consistency in the regulative features of bhakti and the character and qualities of a devotee, Those are symptoms. I mean, there's 3 places in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna asks, how do they sit? How do they walk? How do they speak? Or, same, beyond the modes of nature, the end of chapter 14. What does it look like beyond the modes of nature? And most importantly, how do you get there? So by becoming knowledgeable in Bhagavad Gita, you can have the discerning lens to look through. Okay, we're done? Up front here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I had a question. I was wondering, how does righteousness fit in with Kali Yuga? Like,
How does what fit in?
Righteousness and dharma. Like,
Which
how do
sickness?
Righteousness.
Righteousness, okay.
Because
I got
in
sickness.
Sattva,
What do you mean by righteousness? Like indignant? I'm a righteous person. Not like that.
like doing
Virtue?
your dharma. Your
Okay,
duty
virtue.
And
Okay. How does virtue and that kind of, good conduct, dharmic conduct fit in with
Kali Yuga.
Kali Yuga? It bounces. Doesn't fit in. People in Kali Yuga don't have inclination that way. So what are you asking?
Like, how do we incorporate righteousness into our day-to-day lives?
You and me and us in this room. How do we? So there's right conduct that we learn from scripture and Guru Sadhu Shastra. That's what guides us, and that's that which is righteous or that which is dharmic, or that which is to be done, and we do our best, you and I and everyone, to align ourselves with that right conduct. But that's not the standard of perfection or of attainment. It's the purpose behind which we may be trying to do that. Correct?
Yes,
Because there's, from Rupa Goswami's teachings, there are 2 causes out of, if we're too much attached to the dharmic rule without really understanding the purpose behind the dharmic rule, it destroys bhakti. Or neglecting them, it destroys bhakti. But just following righteousness for the sake of righteousness, it destroys bhakti. It's an inhibitor. So therefore, it's really important to know the purpose behind some act that's dharmic.
And one more question.
Yeah.
So, in Kali Yuga, our goal by attaining the human form of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and we have many tools to do that. We
Yes.
chant and we do sankirtan and sadhana,
Yeah.
and one of those tools is also our voice and our speech. So,
Yes.
how do we make sure, what is the proper way to speak
Okay.
daily?
Beautiful question. I'll give a short answer and then a longer one, or at least allude to a longer one. Austerity of speech is found in Bhagavad Gita, where first you need to know what, but then you can strive for the how to, just like you need to know what dharma is, so you can strive for dharma. So, speak the truth pleasingly. So it's a part of, an antidote for Kali Yuga is be truthful. Because we're used to not being truthful. I mean, there was self-delusion and deluding others conveniently. So, squeaky clean, be truthful. But then, it's even more challenging to be truthful in such a way it's pleasing to others, because they may not want to hear the truth. Like these 2 reporters. They were asking questions. They were educated men. They weren't ugly, nasty, challenging, feisty people. But they're professionals. They want to get a story for their publication, so they're paid for. So they're trying to get Prabhupada in a corner and get him to say something that would make a newsworthy, people, wow, he said something really juicy, let's publish that one. So they're trying to get him to do that. And he was careful, but he was very direct. But he would say, people can't understand because, and then eventually you can't understand because. They simply have a wrong conception of they have a material conception of what's important, of life, of work, of, and he was using these metaphors to keep it from the, that they would feel insulted. The car and the driver of the car. So, speaking pleasingly is a challenge, especially when you're trying to speak the truth. And then there's a detail that says, even if you know what the truth is, and you're prepared to try to speak it peacefully, but pleasingly, you should refrain from doing that unless you have a relationship with the person where you're like the teacher or you have some authority position, relationship with that person. So that's austerity of speech. Those are some of the things spoken of. It's a nice verse. Somebody know the verse number? 15:7 or something? 15:17? 17:15.
1:5.
They'll look it up. Austerity of speech. Now that was the shorter answer. This is so important. Last year, now coming again, part 2, is empathic communication. Because devotees mean well. 15. Okay, which chapter?
17.
Chapter 17, text 15. Chapter 17, text 15. So, we're having a 3.5-day seminar, part 2, from the same thing, part 1, on empathic communication. And speaking the truth pleasingly, where you're concerned about how it's going to impact the other person. Speak the truth with concern of how the other person is going to receive your words. It takes some refinement. It takes some intelligence. It takes some purity. Not easy. It is very important. And devotees need a little help in this department. Not any community, not this one, that one. Devotees. It's just part of refinement of character. And we're not, culture's kind of been lost. So, you want to say something further?
So, in school and stuff, we see people who are bullying other people.
Oh.
They think that what they're saying to the other person is the truth.
Yeah.
So then,
Not only that, they say it in a rough manner.
exactly. So then, how do we avoid hurting people with what we think is the truth? And
Well, you don't associate with bullies. Associate with gentle people. Now, there's this nice teaching. Dhira dhira jana priya priya karo nirmatsaro pujito. Describing the Sad Goswamis, they were dear to the gentle and the ruffians. Nirmatsara, because they weren't envious. So in the Bhagavatam it says the same about Prahlad. So associate with Prahlad. Now, how do you associate with Prahlad? You know, read about him, hear his words, try to appreciate his mood, and that way you'll associate with him. You get his association that way. And find persons that are available, at least through sound, through reported messages, where they're also of a similar nature. And that becomes your nature. Besides, this is, when I was your age, something that I learned. You said you're kind of saying it yourself in your own way, but it's one thing, any 2-bit teenager, this was my language, any 2-bit teenager can tell you all the things that are wrong. But where's that teenager that can make it better? So you got the right question. How do you be the acharya of proper speech instead of being like that? So I don't like that. But what's the alternative? How do you cultivate that alternative? You have to want to. That's a beginning. Recognizing this is good beginning, very essential beginning. It's not that's unwholesome. I don't want to be part of that. And then, you know, through association and through that hearing, and that's what. Yeah, it's in the 3rd canto, chapter 14, when Kashyapa tells Diti, "You're going to have 2 sons, they're demons. But they'll be killed by Vishnu." So she asked for the benediction, let them not be killed by anyone else but Vishnu. Because then they'll go to the good place. They'll go to Vishnu. Instead of, you know, terrorizing other people. And then so he says, because of your unavoidable devotion to Vishnu, she did this bad thing, but because of your unavoidable, he gives 5 things without all the whole verse. You will have a grandson. Hiranyakashipu will have a son who will be just the opposite of his father. Have no enmity towards anyone. And because he has no enmity towards anyone, he'll be dear to everyone. Except for one person. Because he was being inspired. But because being inspired by Super Soul. So if you want to please, so this is the operative principle. If you want to please Krishna, we'll say Super Soul, or please Krishna, the Lord of the heart. If that's really what you want, he will help you. And part of the help is great souls who are free from that, like Prahlad, and hear about them. The Bhagavatam carries you to that place where you'll be able to do exactly what you want to do, and not be like the bullies. But not just say, I don't like the bullies. But how are you going to be, you know, strong enough and pure enough to be on the other side of that kind of negative influence, because it's around us. Not just the extreme people, it's the mild people are also passive aggressive in different ways. But I don't want to be like that, so know what's the alternative and how do you get there? Association, hearing, and serving. Let your activity and speech be pleasing. And then Super Soul will give you the intelligence and protection. Even in public schools. And then in college. And then in the workplace. And so on. You'll feel it. And I feel protected.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, we're going to have to end. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna devotees, let's again loudly chant the Hare Krishna